Okay. Okay, I think we're ready. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on the United Nations Public Service Awards. We've got a pretty packed program for you today, running roughly 2.5 hours. I'd like to begin by welcoming everybody and also going through just a few virtual housekeeping rules. All of you joining as attendees, we unfortunately can't see or hear you, but you are free to ask questions to any of our panelists throughout the entire webinar by using the question and answer box or the Q&A box that you see at the bottom of the screen on the bar. We just ask that when you're asking questions, you ask them to the session that's taking place at that time so we can better sort through them. So for example, we'll be going through the technical session of the 2021 UNPSA cycle near the end of the program. So any questions relevant to that, if you can leave it until that session, that would be great. And keep your questions for our 2020 winners for the beginning part of the program. For those of you who would prefer to listen in Spanish, you can do so by clicking the Spanish globe interpretation or the interpretation symbol at the bottom of your screen, and you can click on Spanish. Or I think if you're listening from a mobile app, you can go into more and maybe find a language option there. Yeah, I think that's it. For our panelists, if everybody could keep their mics on mute until they're speaking, that would really help with the sound. And then on that note, I'd like to begin by handing the screen over to Mr. John Mary Causea, Chief of the Public Service Innovation Branch in the Division of Public Institutions and Digital Government here in UNPSA. John has been overseeing the program, the UNPSA program, since its inception. So if I can't answer any of your questions, he will certainly be able to. John, I'll hand the screen over to you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think we are from all over the world. You fit in those time zones. Let me begin by welcoming you to this webinar and thanking you very much for dedicating this time and effort to the proceedings of the webinar. I would also want to recognize the presence of our director, Mr. Joang Zhu. I can see on the screen that he's listening. Thank you, Joang, for joining us. These are opening remarks for the webinar. And as you are aware, the webinar is about the 2021 United Nations Public Service Awards. Now, the Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs has been since 2003, when the United Nations Public Service Awards were launched, promoting innovations in public sector institutions and facilitating the search for innovations in governance and public administration through this program of the United Nations Public Service Awards. Originally, the purpose was focused on facilitating the implementation of the Millennium Development Goals, and mainly it still is to promote and reward innovation and excellence in public service, but this time, as we speak, in support of the 23rd Agenda for Sustainable Development. It rewards the creative achievements and contributions of public institutions that lead to more effective and responsive public administration in countries all over the world. Through an annual competition, I'm sure some of you participating have also participated in this competition. The United Nations Public Service Awards promotes the role, professionalism, and visibility of public service. It specifically seeks to shine a spotlight on some of the most innovative and critical work being undertaken by public sector institutions across the world. As such, the categories for which awards are delivered are regularly revised to ensure that the most relevant initiatives are nominated and evaluated. As I have said, from 2003, the program focused on the Millennium Development Goals. And then in 2016, following the adoption of the 23rd Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations General Assembly, the entire United Nations Public Service Awards program was revised to incorporate initiatives aimed at meeting the 23rd Agenda for Sustainable Development. Building on this, the 2021 categories for the awards are being revised.
El 2021 se han revisado
On the key outcomes, issues, and discussions that arose during the annual Committee of Experts on Public Administration, whose overall theme was promoting effective governance and institutional reform to accelerate delivery of the Sustainable Development Goals, with particular reference to the COVID-19 pandemic response and recovery. I think at this point we all realize that still focusing on the implementation of the 23rd Agenda for Sustainable Development and the urgent need to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the world has witnessed an interrupter, and that is the COVID-19 and its pandemic, which has challenged literally all countries, especially on the question of how prepared are we deal with any crisis arises. And because of this challenge, without taking our eyes from the implementation of the 23rd Agenda, the Public Service Awards categories have been reviewed to focus also on these questions concerning crisis preparedness. And the revised categories in terms of wording are the following. We will have a moment later on to focus on each in terms of detail. Category 1, fostering innovation to deliver inclusive and equitable services for all, including through digital transformation. Category 2, enhancing the effectiveness of public institutions to reach the Sustainable Development Goals. Category 3, promoting gender-responsive public services to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And Category 4, institutional preparedness and response in times of crisis. I would just want to say something in this opening remark about Category 4. If you have had the time to read the rules of submission, one of the important rules is that an initiative to be considered must have been under implementation for at least 2 years. Now, this category on institutional preparedness and response in times of crisis was designed with the COVID-19 pandemic in mind and the challenges this pandemic has posed to the world. However, as we all know, the pandemic is still going on, and the COVID-19 seems to be challenging the world for the whole year, and it's going to continue doing so for the foreseeable future, which means the initiatives that need to be nominated in category 4 have still got to respect the rule of having been under implementation for at least 2 years. We know that in some countries, there have been examples of initiatives which have been going on for quite some time, and which initiatives have actually helped those countries to overcome or to minimize the negative impact of the pandemic. Those are the ones that we are interested in. Because the ones that were started because the COVID-19 hit, it is difficult to judge their success for the simple reason that, as you have observed, today we say country X is doing very well and start clapping hands, and then the next day, the COVID-19 sparks off again in the same country. So what would we do if we give an award to a country which succeeds and then the next day the COVID-19 is still sparking? So this category is aiming at initiatives that probably had existed, but which made the countries resilient to COVID-19. But probably we will have chance to discuss. So mine were to give opening remarks, a little bit of the background. I will be happy to participate in the discussion. The most important thing here is that we listen to the attendees and the participants, and we get to be clear about how to get more and more nominations for the 2021 United Nations Public Service Awards. Let me conclude by saying that behind all these efforts lies the efforts to celebrate the work of public servants in whatever categories, in whatever sector, whose work has for many years been underrated, whose image has for many years been eroded, and whose efforts have for many years been degraded because there was a thinking that private sector operators are more effective, more efficient, more committed. And yet through this Public Service Awards program since 2003, we have tons and tons of proof that contrary to popular belief, public servants are sustaining the survival of this world through dedicated delivery of services. So I wish you very fruitful deliberations, and I will be happy to follow up, answering questions and participating. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for those opening remarks. I think it sets the scene nicely for our next segment, which will be highlighting the work of the 2020 UNPSA winners. As John mentioned, because of the ongoing COVID pandemic, we were unfortunately unable to do our usual awards ceremony in the UN Public Service Forum, which originally was going to be held in the Republic of Korea this year. So I think it's quite fitting that we will start showcasing our 2020 winners with our winner from the Republic of Korea. But before I hand over the floor to Korea, as John mentioned, we had 7 winners across 4 categories for the 2020 awards, coming from all regions, the 5 regions that you can participate through. Again, just a reminder to any of the attendees listening, if you have a question for any of our winners, please feel free to use the Q&A or the question and answer box at the bottom of the screen. I can see we've got a couple of answers coming in, and I'll read those questions to our winners after their presentation. And anybody joining late, again, you can also listen to the webinar in Spanish. So let me begin with our winners in category 1, which was delivering inclusive and equitable services to leave no one behind. We had 3 winners in this category for 2020. Our first winner, coming from the Asia Pacific region, is the Seongdong District's Office in the Republic of Korea with their HYO policy. And here to present the initiative and also through video is Mi Kyung-hee Kim, Director of the Health Center. And it's actually quite late there in Korea, so I think another good example of public servants going above and beyond in their work. So Ms. Kyung-hee Kim, I'll hand over the floor to you. Korea, can you hear us?
She has the mic.
Yeah.
Muted.
Korea, if you can hear us, can you unmute your mic? We can't hear you.
Yes, I can. I got here.
Hi, Jianyun. Okay. So would you like us to show the video straight away, or you'd like to say a few words?
Yes, I can play the video.
Okay,
And
I can do it from my side if you prefer.
yes.
Okay, so we're going to start with the video that Korea prepared especially for this webinar. So, so if I can ask everybody else to go on mute.
대한민국 서울 성동구 지역 주민의 건강을 적극적으로 관리하고 있습니다. 성동구는 노인 인구가 지속적으로 증가함에 따라 사회적 건강 돌봄의 필요성을 인식하고 의료 사각지대를 해소하기 위해 의사 4명, 17개 동별 전담 간호사 17명으로 구성된 효사랑 주치의팀이 도움이 필요한 가정에 직접 방문하여 보건복지와 의료 서비스를 함께 제공하고 있습니다.
안 보이는데.
사랑 주치의는 75세 이상 노인 전체를 대상으로 민간과 공공기관, 주민이 협력하여 소외된 어르신들의 건강관리 능력을 향상시키며 건강의회 요인을 개선했는데요. 더불어 어르신들이 집 밖으로 나와서 사회활동을 참여하는 등 삶의 질이 향상될 수 있도록 공공서비스를 강화하고 있습니다.
항시 고맙게만 생각하고 내가 보고 싶을 때는 와주시니까 혼자 사니까 애로움은 많이 없어지고 있어요. 그 병원도 같이 가시고 그 약방에 약도 타러 주시고 그래서 이제 건강도 좋아지고 마음도 편해지고 그래서 항시 의사 선생님만 믿고 따르고 있습니다.
호사랑 주치의로서 75세 이상 어르신들을 집집마다 방문할 때 어르신들이 참 저희를 반가워하시고 또 언제 오는지 기다리고 계십니다. 전화를 드리면 아침부터 문 열고 기다리고 계시고요. 병원에서만 봤을 때는 파악되지 않았던 그런 건강에 나빴던 부분들이 제가 그 어르신들의 삶에 들어가서 무엇을 먹고 어느 공간을 사시고 무슨 생각을 하시는지 또 경제적 상황 어떤지를 한꺼번에 같이 고민을 하면서 할머니 할아버지들의 건강을 챙겨드릴 때 훨씬 더 효과가 있고 그리고 건강이 나아지는 것을 저희가 보면서 함께 감동하고 함께 웃는 일이 참 많습니다. 이 사업이 계속 정착되어서 많은 어르신들이 행복하게 좋겠습니다.
안녕하세요. 서울 성동구청장 정원호입니다. UN 공공행정상이라는 뜻깊은 상을 수상하여 193개 UN 회원국의 성동구라는 대한민국의 지방정부의 이름을 알릴 수 있는 영광스러운 기회를 갖게 되어 정말 기쁩니다. 성동구는 스마트 도시를 구정 비전으로 4차 산업혁명의 스마트한 기술을 통해 주민의 삶의 질을 높이고 누구도 소외되지 않는 포용도시 정책을 추진하고 있습니다. 호사랑 규치 제도는 성동형 의료복지 시스템의 대표적인 정책으로 어르신들의 의료 사각지대를 해소하고 맞춤형 공공의료 서비스를 제공하고 있습니다. 이번 수상을 통해 우리 구가 추진하고 있는 정책이 우리나라를 비롯한 전 세계에 긍정적인 영향을 미치고 공공행정의 발전에 기여할 수 있게 되어 기쁩니다. 앞으로도 주민 모두가 존중받는 도시, 누구나 살고 싶은 도시, 모두가 행복한 도시, 성동구를 위해 최선을 다하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
보다 나은 삶을 위한 변화의 시작. 그 한가운데 성동구가 있습니다.
Great, thank you for the Seong District's health policy. I just wanted to know, Jian Young or Kyung Hee Kim, if you had anything you wanted to add or say. If not, I can see if there are any questions that have come through.
Yes, I'm appreciate to you, Songdong win the UNPSA. And we prepared the video because it is more wonderful explaining the Songdong's health policy than the PowerPoint. I want to enjoy Songdong's health policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think this year more than ever, particularly with the older people being more vulnerable to the COVID pandemic, services directed towards older persons are more vital than ever before. So I think we're still waiting for some questions to come in, but as we do, let's move on to our second winner under category 1, which again was delivering inclusive and equitable services to leave no one behind. And we are going to move to Western Europe, where Portugal has won with their initiative from the Administrative Modernization Agency and the Directorate General of Energy and Geology with their automatic social energy tariff. And here to tell us more about the tariff are Mr. Pedro Viana, Director of the Digital Transformation at the Administrative Modernization Agency, and Ms. Lilia Varejo, Superior Technician, I'm sure you're also a super technician, Superior Technician at the Market Division of the Directorate General of Energy and Geology. And I'll hand the floor over to you, Pedro and Lilia.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm going to share my screen. Just a moment, please. So before I start the presentation, I would like to congratulate United Nations for this initiative and to thank this award, which is very, very important for us. So now I'm going to talk about the automatic social energy tariff in Portugal. The energy social tariff is a support for economically and socially vulnerable consumers, which is a discount on the electricity and natural gas bills. The main goals are ensuring access to an essential energy service by vulnerable consumers, contribute to price not being an exclusion factor, and serve the purpose of universal access to quality services at affordable prices. So the electricity social tariff was created in 2010, and in 2011 was the creation of the natural gas social tariff. At that time, the vulnerable consumer had to request the application of the energy social tariff by presenting documents to his energy supplier. And in 2016, there was the introduction of the automatic application process, and the energy social tariff is automatically applied without any consumer requests. In 2020, we are working on some legislative changes in order to reduce the periodicity of the automatic processing and also extending the eligibility conditions to benefit from the electricity and natural gas social tariff. And now we are going to see the numbers regarding the electricity social tariff. Before the first automatic application process, we had about 140,000 beneficiaries. And with the introduction of the automatic application process, the number increased a lot to around 692,000 beneficiaries. In September 2020, which was the last automatic application concluded, we have about 750,000 beneficiaries. Regarding the natural gas social tariff, before the first automatic application process, we had about 14,000 beneficiaries, and with the introduction of this automatic application, we had about 35,000 beneficiaries. In September 2020, we have about 34,000 beneficiaries. So, the social electricity tariff was created to reduce the energy burden of domestic consumers, aiming to ensure the price was not an exclusion factor. The automatic social energy tariff was designed to be an instrument of social justice and equity. And the effectiveness and efficiency of the automatic energy social tariff is ensured by an interoperability platform run by UNPSA that does the integration between the GSG, tax authority, and the social security, as you can see in this scheme below. So, the energy social tariff is considered an effective measure to protect economically vulnerable consumers. Beneficiaries are selected from a list through an automated recognition mechanism. And the social tariff is automatically applied by suppliers without request from the consumers. To benefit from the electricity social tariff, we have two types of criteria: the household income and certain social benefits received from the social security. To benefit from the natural gas social tariff, we have only one type of criteria, and the contract holder must receive certain social benefits more restricted than in the case of the electricity. The automated social energy tariff is in line with several of the Sustainable Development Goals, namely the first one, no poverty, by assuring that about 800,000 vulnerable households have affordable access to basic energy services. It is also in line with SDG number 7, affordable and clean energy, because in Portugal, the share of the electricity from renewable sources is around 53% in 2019. And the automatic social energy tariff is also in line with the Sustainable Development Goal number 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, because by reducing the energy bills, people can afford to warm their houses, equipping them with the proper appliances and have proper lighting, improving their housing conditions. What are the future plans for this initiative? As I mentioned before, we are working in some legislative changes in order to reduce the periodicity of the automatic processing and also extending the eligibility conditions required to benefit from the electricity and natural gas social tariff. The automatic social energy tariff served as an inspiration in the design of new and more effective services in Portugal. We already have water social tariff that is implemented in some Portuguese municipalities. We also have the liquefied petroleum gas bottle solidarity tariff. That is a pilot project that has not started yet. And we also have internet social tariff that is waiting legislation. The automatic application process of the social energy tariff has been recognized as a very important measure both in Portugal and in Europe. Winning the UNPSA gave us more strength to continue working and developing new measures to improve citizens' lives, namely by tackling energy poverty. And now I'm going to pass the floor to Pedro Viana from AMA. They will talk about the interoperability platform that is used the automatic application process of the energy social tariff. So, Pedro?
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Lilia. I would ask you if you can keep the presentation so I don't have to change it. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, this effort was possible because of course, of the politic intention of providing a sustainable and better life for citizens in Portugal, and was implemented by our DGEG, that Lilia is representing, and it was also able. We were able to implement this using the interoperability platform for the public sector in Portugal. So this is a platform that is in place since 2007, and is one of our major building blocks for ensuring an accelerated rhythm of adoption of digital services by the citizens, but also providing that these services are inclusive and no one is left behind. So it is a way for implement the share reuse principle, only principle, and making sure that we are simplifying the lives of citizens and sometimes completely automating the services that the government is providing. Can you see it? Okay, so since 2007, we have now more than 123 entities that are connected to our interoperability platform. And this interoperability platform allows us to provide several services. Normally, I say, since you're born until you die, along the way, in the background, there is the interoperability platform working for the citizens without they even know sometimes. So since the moment I born in the hospital, all the registries are made, and for instance, they are shared with all entities on the public sector that have to have access, for instance, for creating the national ID. And for instance, when I'm studying, all the scholarships can be processed knowing the income of the family without the students have to deliver a paper confirming they are eligible. And for instance, when you are marrying, the same happens, and your ID changes automatically with you. When you are working, because we also provide lots of services, not only to public sector, but also some services to the private sector. For instance, when you are creating your bank account, you can do it without delivering any paper, because the banks, with your permission, are allowed to access to the fundamental information for opening the bank account. And when, for instance, someone dies, all the processes, they start because someone registers that this person dies in a system in the health sector. So if you can change. So since 2007, we made possible to interchange almost 2 billion messages, business messages, between the public sector and between the public sector and the private sector. And along other services that we also provide for simplifying the life of citizens, we also provided savings for the public sector for implementing their initiatives in time, in money, and also we contribute to lowering the burden to the environment. So neutralizing carbon, saving trees, and saving emissions by avoiding, for instance, people to move along to get deliver paper to the public sector. And by doing this, we are providing, among others, this service, and we are very happy to showcase this case in order to motivate the adoption for other public entities to similar services like these ones. Thank you very much for this award.
Thank you, Anna and Pedro. I'm just going to encourage again attendees, if they have questions, to use the question and answer box. I think people are being a little shy this morning. But I will say with this project in particular, you know, for the 2021 cycle of the UNPSA, we decided to mainstream the issues of digital government and frontier technology across all categories. So if you remember last year, and we have winners this from last year as well, who submitted and won under the digital government and technology category. But, you know, increasingly, and the tariff initiative is a good example of where there's been a real, I mean, the backbone of the tariff initiative is really the incorporation and integration of strong ICT to be able to deliver these services. So I think that's really what we're looking at as well, is how are people using digital government and new technologies to enhance public service delivery. Even if that isn't their end aim, it really gets them there. And then I would also like to ask, you mentioned, Lilia, that there's possibly an internet tariff on the way. And I know a lot of people have been talking about this more, particularly during COVID, when people are working from home. Their fuel bills have also gone up when they've been working from home. And so I think tariffs like this are becoming increasingly important. But have you noticed maybe any impact on the tariff that you provide during the last few months as well? Has there been increased application for it?
So yes, the internet social tariff is also waiting some legislation, because internet is now considered an essential service, and the intention is to, like the electricity social tariff, is to support vulnerable consumers. So in terms of the energy of social tariff, the number didn't increase a lot yet, because maybe we don't have the bad results of this pandemic yet. Maybe later, but now we don't see that result for now.
Sure, maybe when we get into the winter months as well.
Maybe.
If I can, I want to clarify something. You don't need to have an application. It's automatic done for you.
Yes.
Okay, that's a very important thing. You don't have to know. You don't have to know how to do it. You simply receive, and you can say if you want it or not.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, my bad grammar. Okay. If there's no further questions, hold on. Let me just check the question box. Nope. Somebody's thanking you for your innovative initiative. Saying it's very useful, but no specific question. Thank you very much, Pedro and Lilia. On that note, we'll move on to our third winner under category 1 for 2020. And they come all the way from Brazil, from the Latin American Caribbean region. Brazil, this is, I think you guys also won last year, so you guys are doing a pretty good job with public service delivery. This is, and forgive my pronunciation, the Jabautu Prepara, preparatory course for students admission into reference technical schools. And here to tell us more about it is their English language education coordinator, Miss Labania Consejo Nascimento, and you can please pronounce that properly for me.
Don't worry. Good morning, everyone. I am Libania Nascimento, Education Coordinator and the staff member of Jaboatão Prepara. It's an incredible honor to be at UNPSA 2020. And first of all, I'd like to thank the United Nations for the recognition of our initiative, and I'd like to extend my congratulations to the other winners too. Now I'm going to present our project. Just a moment. Okay. Jaboatão Prepara, created in 2015, is a preparatory course for students' admissions into professional technical schools. This program promotes an education of equality, offers professional guidance, and encourages students to achieve their potential. Our program is based on 2 principles. Number 1, offer a preparatory course, and number 2, provide professional guidance. Let's see each one. Principle 1, we offer preparatory course. many students come from extremely poor families and live in situations of social vulnerability. So we established decentralized teaching centers and ensured transportations and food for them. We also promoted the missions of interested students in the last year of the middle school. We offer extra classes on Saturdays directing the approach to the programmatic contents. And we offer attractive and dynamic content with access to online tests. Principle 2, provide professional guidance. We treat each young person in a unique way, according to their needs, to their interests. We also promote discussions about professional careers and values of technical qualifications. We prioritize the direct and democratic participation of the entire school community. We also promote psychosocial support and motivational encouragement for them. Problems. According to the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, IBGE, 12% of the poorest young people between 15 and 17 years old had dropped out school without completing high school in 2018. The other problem is the low approval of the municipal system students in the admission exams to the technical professional schools. I'm going to talk about our plan structure. In the beginning of the year, we plan the project. In the middle of the year, from March to October, we execute the project. And at the end of the year, we evaluate and plan the next academic year. Our target audience. As I said, our students come from poor families with low education backgrounds and outside the labor market or practicing formal activities. Big numbers. We reached great results in 2019. Approval higher than 8% in technical school in 2019, and 7,800 students have already participated in the program between 2015 and 2019. Now, I'm going to present a special testimonial from one of our students. It's a short video. The audio is in Portuguese, but the subtitles in English.
Meu nome é João Augusto, tenho 14 anos e eu sou aluno do Jabotão Prepara. E com ele eu visei uma grande oportunidade, né, de realizar meu sonho, de conseguir ingressar numa das escolas técnicas. Meu pai, ele parou de estudar no segundo ano do ensino médio e minha mãe, ela parou de estudar na metade do sexto ano. E uma coisa que eu fiquei muito feliz foi que
no podía ayudarlo.
Eu tive essa iniciativa de estudar para dar orgulho a ele, incentivo também a ele.
A prepararme yo también y volví a estudiar. Quiero estudiar para contribuir en mi hogar, dar a mis padres apoyo y porque quiero poder hacer algo en mi vida.
João Augusto, student of Jabotão Prepara in 2019. He's a former student of Municipal School Albeniz Maria, proved in the electrical engineer course at the Federal Institute of Pernambuco, IFPE. Outcomes. The approval only increases, as you can see. On the other hand, the dropout rate down. Good results for us. Impact. Our initiative contributed with the sustainable goals, development goals. They are equality education. We offer a quality education, inclusive, equitable way. And the other subject, the other goal is decent work and economic growth. We promoted the access to the professional technical schools. And number 10, we can reduce inequalities in our municipality. We ensured classes in accessible places, and we adapted teaching materials. Our plans for the future. In short term, we try to ensure health security for returning to school, especially after pandemic. In a middle term, we will expand the number of vacancies to serve 100% of the 95-year students. In a long term, we expand the economic and social development of students and the community through the formation of partnerships with local industry and commerce to offer internship and job vacancies to form students from the technical schools. The repercussion of the award. This award is extremely significant for our municipality, and it gave a greater visibility to our education system. Everyone involved in the project felt more confident and motivated to carry on the program. Municipal management, Department of Education, and the school community. Recognition of the students in the school community and a greater demand among students of the municipal network. Many districts showed interest in adapting and replying the program in their realities. Many local journals announced the awards. It's very important for us. We received many acknowledgements from everywhere. To conclude, education does not change the world. Education changes people. People transform the world. By Paulo Freire. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Libanya, for that presentation detailing the work of the initiative. I'm just looking to see a couple of questions that came in. I think one refers kind of more broadly, but I think it'll be interesting for you to answer as well, particularly as one of your goals is SDG 10 on targeting inequality. This one pertains specifically to the gender dimension, though, which of course is in a separate goal than SDG 10, but can also come under that heading. And I'm just wondering, were there any specific areas that you looked on when it came to targeting gender inequality or enhancing the participation of girls and young women in the program, or was that a challenge at all in any way?
We offered this course for all of the students from our network, independent, gender, or, you know, it's offered to our students.
Okay, yeah, perfect. And I think that this kind of goes, again, as I said, the question was a little broader to kind of generally about the initiatives. And it is something that we will touch upon later in the webinar. We have Katie Gifford from UN Women with us, who will be talking a bit more about how we've mainstreamed the issue of gender equality through the UNPSA process and what we're doing to enhance kind of knowledge and awareness raising about that. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail, but I think it'll be interesting as well for other winners of 2020 to maybe touch a little bit upon how they've also kind of worked with the gender equality, enhancing gender equality aspect. And then finally, you know, again, when it comes to this year in particular, has been challenging, especially for the education system, with many classes going online and just disruption to coursework and everything. And I'm wondering if you can maybe also address that a bit. Has that impacted your program in any way, and how have you dealt with those impacts?
Okay, we are planning a specific platform to offer online courses to our students. We have a special activities for the students, who offer special activities for the students at home. We gave a booklet for them. and we try to follow their studies.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in general, it's a very challenging time for students and educators alike, both just in terms of curriculum, but also the technology aspect and trying to keep people motivated. And of course, obviously the socialization aspect as well, which is often lost and is difficult to kind of keep going through Zoom. So I think we all empathize with the challenging work that you and others in that area have. Unless there are any more questions for Brazil, I think we will now move on from category 1 to category 2. Category 2 was ensuring integrated mechanisms for sustainable development. We only had one winner for category 2 for 2020, and they are coming again from the Latin American Caribbean region, all the way from Mexico. And it is the Nuevo León Council for Strategic Planning, and here to present for us is Ana Hierro. Ana, the floor is yours.
Hi. Sure, let me share my screen. Sure. All right, well, thank you very much for this space to share our experience with you guys, and as the same as everyone, really congratulations to everyone else, and I really encourage all the applicants to try. We never expected to win, so this has been really a fantastic ride for us. So Consejo Nuevo León is an entity that aims to respond to two fundamental questions, and I see why this isn't, okay, here. First, how can the talent and energy that distinguishes civil society be canalized to propose public policies? And second, what can civil society do to ensure continuity on long-term projects despite political transitions? In order to secure society's well-being, what we figured out is that it's essential to prepare today for the challenges that the future will bring, and to do it with the cooperation of diverse sectors. So a space dedicated to ensure the engagement and cooperation between civil society and the government was created through a specific law on strategic planning, and this was Consejo Nuevo León. Consejo Nuevo León was defined as an advisory and consultative public body to the executive power in government, with a non-partisan mandate that transcends electoral cycles. It also integrates the experience and knowledge of four main sectors: civil society, academia, the private sector, and the government. We all work together in this council. And what we do is we plan and we evaluate public policies to ensure the sustainable development of Nuevo León. Consejo Nuevo León represents a turning point in the policy-making processes because it formalizes the citizens' engagement in the design of public policies, and it accompanies the government in their implementation. So it ensures that civil society is present from the beginning of a public policy all the way till its end. Consejo Nuevo León was founded in 2014, and our first document and our main working tool is the strategic plan of the state, which was published in 2016. And we started doing evaluations in 2017. We do annual evaluations of the government's implementation of certain projects. And in 2020, we are actually now carrying out the review of the strategic plan to improve it as a tool for monitoring and evaluating the government's performance. We have three main responsibilities. First, to plan. As I just said, we have the strategic plan for the state, which is a 15-year-long document, which contains priorities on, right now it's going to be 8 main areas: culture and education, social development, health. We have sustainable development, economic development, security and justice, as well as we have effective government transparency and public finances. All of these are aligned to the 2020 agenda. And this document is the main planning instrument for the government once it starts. As you know, our state governments change every 6 years, and we do not have the possibility to re-elect the government. So the only way to ensure that there's continuity in our million, like this big public policies that aim to address the huge challenges that are brought by things like climate change or by structural processes like poverty and hunger are addressed through this plan. And what we do on our second task is to monitor how the strategic plan has been implemented by the state government. We do this through commissions that have participants from the 4 sectors I mentioned before. They are headed by a citizen figure as well as by someone from the state government. And together they define an agenda each year to try to see how we were gonna make sure that the plan is implemented. And then we also do an evaluation of how that plan is being implemented by the government. We do this annually. So we basically monitor and evaluate the progress of the 2030 agenda through this plan. As I said, we are reviewing the plan in 2020 because our plan was first published before the 2030 agenda was published. So what we've been doing is to try to get everything in the same level, you know, make sure that our current plan complies to the 2030 agenda goals. And what we do is that every single project that we carry out in the commissions and every single document we produce is aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'll give you some examples of the projects we have. For example, we have a project called Zero Hunger, which is the same as the goal, you know. And what we do is we have defined an interinstitutional strategy to combat hunger and avoid the waste of food in the entire state. We also have another project which has been a collaboration between different strategies that are fighting violence against women. And we've done basically a coordinating strategy, but also some like learning and providing new tools for women to be able to basically just denounce the violence they're suffering through certain apps, as well as to find like accessible resources to help them figure out how to get out of their situation where they're being subjected to violence. We also created a water plan, the 2050 water plan, which basically has given 17 different projects to the government on how to ensure accessibility to water and better use of water in the state. We created as well a system, or we helped create a system to fight corruption in the state with following a national initiative. We just ensured that civil society was engaged in the translation of the national law to fight corruption, and created a certain series of instruments where citizens are participating in ensuring the application of that law, as well as monitoring the government's implementation of anti-corruption projects, as well as to make sure that any kind of violation is transparent and published to the state. Other examples is we have an observatory on security and justice, which we have, what we have done is we have monthly reports on how we are doing on statistics concerning security and justice, but we also have transcended the reports and done specialized and profound analysis of how a specific crime works, you know. So we started with family crimes and family violence, specifically towards women, and analyzing what happens in each stage of the crime to see where certain measures have to be taken in order to diminish the incidence of that crime. We also help creating an analysis unit for the Secretariat of Public Security, which is aiming to provide more intelligence analysis towards crime prevention. We also worked on designing a centralized unit of investment for the treasury of the state, because we have one of the most prosperous states in terms of economics in Mexico, but we have very low capacity of getting public funds for investment. So that's what we've been working on how can the government be better at getting investment funds for public projects. And also we had a very difficult situation in the pension system for the public sector, because we had to, the government had to every year provide a very high amount of resources, extraordinary resources, to cover the pensions for the public sector. So what we worked is on an outline of a plan to try to diminish that burden, to restructure the entire pension system of the state. And that has been approved by the legislature this year and is being implemented right now. So we're hoping that will bring better outcomes for the finances in the state in the near future. And finally, I want to say that what we do is we also have what we call a knowledge network, in which we partner with the main universities here. We are like a college town, you can say, because we have some of the main universities in Mexico are based in Monterrey. And what we do is we bring, or we try to link the research these universities are doing to the strategic plan, so that we can generate evidence-based policy proposals. And we've been working on that for the past 4 years as well. So how do we measure our success? What we try to do is we influence decision-making in the public sphere, so the design and implementation of policies are based in comprehensive, unbiased empirical evidence. And we do it with the citizenship, with the citizens' participation, as well as with the representation of academia and the private sector. So thank you very much, and we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks so much, Anna. That was really interesting, and really reflects the integrated nature of the 2030 agenda as well. You really cover a whole variety of different areas and topics, and it's great also to see such a strong gender dimension as well. I had a question which actually Valentina has also asked, and that is, how has Consejo Nuevo León ensured the participatory mechanism has been implemented during the pandemic? How have you been challenged by that, and how are you kind of getting around that?
We are Zoom lovers. Basically,
like me.
We have no, we've been forced to. We've just done every single meeting of our commissions online. We're lucky that we have been able to provide this service, and that we have been able to bring everyone along. And actually, maybe one of the best examples I have is right now, as I said, we're reviewing the strategic plan for the state. And we were gonna conduct a public consultation process, right? Very open, very inclusive, trying to get everyone to get involved into giving opinions on the plan. And the pandemic has limited that. So what we did is we created a platform that is open to everyone, where we have basically put there our drafts for the plan, open for everyone to see for a period of over 2 weeks. And what we've done is we've made this like an open Google Doc, you see? So you can see the plan, you can comment on it, you can start a discussion with everyone else there. And it's been very interesting because in a period of 2 weeks, we've gotten over 1,000 comments from the citizens. We've gotten over 4,500 people going to the platform and reading the plan, which has been very encouraging to us, because 4,500 people going and reading a strategic plan is a lot of people.
For sure.
And that's what we've tried to do. It's definitely not as open as we would have wanted to be, because we understand that there are limitations for technological access still for a margin of our population. But we believe that at least we're getting to as many people as we can, given the conditions we have right now with the pandemic. But it's been challenging. We've been trying to figure out how to do it. And this is what we've come up with so far.
Sure. Yeah. And actually that was a follow-up question as well. How do you kind of overcome those ICT challenges? But as you said, it is kind of an ongoing work. I also, John has a question, but before I hand the floor to him, I just wondered as well, what is it, in terms of the demographics of those actively participating? We know kind of worldwide, a lot of younger people are quite disgruntled with government, and there's a real kind of demise in trust with government, and in particular amongst younger people. I'm wondering if you're seeing much participation from youth and the youth demographic at all?
Because of the openness of the platform, we haven't been able to track demographics like very strictly, because we've actually wanted to make it very free, you know, like it's very easy to log in. You can actually log in right now and read the plan. But what we've read from the comments, because you do have to register as a person that comments, we've seen a lot of young people engaging, yeah, mainly like between 25 and 30 something age, you know, but also, and this has been also encouraging for us, we've seen people that are specialists in their areas in the community being engaged in this platform, and we know them because I mean you can see the name and you can recognize them. So we're talking about also people from the 50s 60s age bracket, you know, which has been also encouraging, because we were expecting that, you know, age bracket to also be like a bit discouraged by the technological platform, but it's been interesting to see those different age like groups interacting in this platform as well.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. John, I'll hand the floor to you for the final question for Anna, if you still have one.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. This initiative made me wonder about a very critical challenge that faces the monitoring and evaluation of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, especially in countries which do not have abundant resources. And as you made this presentation, I kept on wondering, how much money do these people have? Because I know when we are challenging governments to focus on the SDGs, the first question is always, look, we barely have money to provide education. Now you want us to look for money to do the monitoring and evaluation, which is even more sometimes than providing education itself. So how did you handle this challenge of resources to do such a successful, extensive program?
Thank you. Yeah, with the evaluation, well, let me start from another perspective. What we've done is we are actually building capacities on our team so we can conduct evaluations ourselves, precisely because of what you said. It's very expensive to go and carry out long-term evaluations. So actually, long-term evaluations, we've only done 2 at this time. And the thing is, the budget of Consejo Nuevo León is mainly focused towards increasing the potential of other government areas. So what we do is we facilitate other government areas to be able to do their own work that's one point. And second, we have financed only 2 evaluations of this type. With the monitoring, what we've done is we've been using public sources, statistical sources to do the monitoring. And we had a problem with the first version of the plan because exactly we could only monitor 50% of our indicators, right? We were very stuck and it was very difficult. And one of the things we've done right now is we've tried to redefine our indicators so that we can measure. I'm sorry, my baby's crying here. I don't know if you can hear her. I'm sorry. But what we've done is we've tried to restructure our indicators so that we can make them align with the public sources we have. Like we have a federal agency that does statistical measurements for the entire country. And what we've done is we've actually signed an agreement with them so that we can make sure that whenever they go and get some statistical information that they were going to get, for example, for the income and housing poll they have, that we can also make sure that if there are certain facts we need, we can maybe add another question or get the data analysis that we need for a certain indicator. So we know that they have information, but we need to be presented. We just need them to be presented in a specific way for our monitoring. So what we've done is build alliances. That's the first thing. And the second is we've built capacities inside our organization. And the third is we've tried to also listen to the government on what they need first. So for example, the evaluations we did were the ones that were requested by the government as well. So what we've done is try to align their priorities of the state government to the priorities we have and just choose a few, which is not necessarily a good answer. I'm sorry, because we haven't figured out a way to have the resources that everybody would want to have for these projects, but that's what we've done so far.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Anna, for your presentation and for the questions that came through. We're going to move now on to category 3 with developing transparent and accountable public institutions. And coming from the Asia and Pacific region, all the way from Bangladesh, we have the e-mutation project from the Ministry of Land. And here to present is Mr. Dulutsaman Khan, PS to the Land Secretary, and Mr. Abdul Manan. And I will hand the floor over to both of you.
Thank you. Respected Mr. John Mary Kaujia, Chief of the Public Service Innovation Branch, UNPSA. Respected Ms. Catherine Ford, Policy Specialist, UNOMEN. Distinguished Mentor and Facilitator, Ms. Elizabeth Niland, Program Management Officer, UNPSA, and distinguished 2020 United National Public Service Award winners and guests, a very good evening to all. My heartfelt special thanks to UN Authority to introducing the initiative on behalf of the Ministry of Land in Bangladesh in front of the international communities. I am very thankful to Dr. Mohammad Abdul Mannan, Additional Secretary and Project Director, Aspire to Innovation A to I, under ICT Division, who nurtured this initiative and handed over to Ministry of Land. For the first time in history of Bangladesh, the Digital Bangladesh program was launched in 2009 by the vision of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to transform Bangladesh into a digital economy by 2021 and knowledge-based economy by 2041. Ministry of Land sets the vision according to our Digital Bangladesh vision, which is effective, transparent, accountable, and people-friendly land management. Now, I am going to present e-mutation initiative in Bangladesh. As you know, 1st June 2020, UN declared the prestigious award, United Nations Public Service Award 2020. Bangladesh accepted this award on e-mutation initiative under the category of developing transparent and accountable public institutions. Basically, my presentation will focus on introduction and overview to the initiative, administrative challenges and mitigate process, the target groups and how to raise vulnerable and marginalized groups, contribution in achieving SDGs agendas, future plans for the initiatives, impact after winning United Nations Public Service Award. Our e-mutation initiative started with a piloting basis within the 7 sub-districts from 1st February 2017, and it expanded over all sub-districts from 1st July 2020. At the beginning, our initiative objectives were implementation of the agenda, Digital Bangladesh and Vision 2021, giving land services to the citizen with reduced cost, time and visit, and to ensure transparency and accountability. This slide has described briefly online mutation application submission and getting tracking status, online decision-making process, and develop ownership documents, send the notification to the service recipients through mobile SMS, and the service anytime, anywhere. We have faced many challenges to implement our initiatives like coordination gap, ICT infrastructure, lack of ICT skill staffs, lack of awareness of the service recipients, complex service process, and availability of budget. Also, we have mitigated these challenges by policy support, regular coordination in different departments, availability of the ICT instruments, training, motivation, and incentives, service providing kiosks, digital center at the rural area, service process simplification, and allocation of preferred budget. Our target group was landowner, which includes landed citizen, farmers, business communities, government and non-government agencies, land developers, and so on. We have raised all target groups through service providing kiosks, digital center at the rural areas, union land offices, and local IT service providers. After execution, our initiative huge impact we found: less time, less cost, and less visit, reduction of land litigation, increase efficiency of service providers, satisfaction of the service recipients, and ease of doing business. The mutation system perfectly pairs with SDGs 16, 16.5, and 16.6, like which I have shown in the slide. 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. 16.5, mitigates corruption and bribery by using transparency. 16.6, the system provides information and enable applicants to track the status of their applications. We have future plans with our initiatives: develop mobile apps for citizen and service providers, capacity development of service providers, integration with the land registration process and land service system, awareness development, NID integration with the system, and create citizen or tenant profile in the single platform. After receiving the United Nations Public Service Award, we see the huge positive impact on civil servants. Media has highlighted the award positively. Land Ministry has taken a project to digitize all land-related services. Also, other government agencies are taking initiatives to digitize the service which they are providing, and it was appreciated in National Parliament by the Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. With the support of A2I and Ministry of Land, developed a land service portal interface shown in the slide. In the service portal interface with a single sign-on for the citizen and the office users, you can see in the slide. Every office has their dashboards with monitoring at a glance and graphical dashboard shown in the slide. I have also shown system-generated mutation application in the slide. Ministry of Land has developed hotline and grievance redress system with a call center whose number is 16122. Land Ministry is trying to reach citizens through hotline to ensure citizen service with a specific time and cost. We have developed a mobile apps named Bhumi Sheba, which is incorporated in all sorts of land services. In the last decade, Bangladesh has already been experienced tremendous growth by the virtue of charismatic leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Today, we experience nearly 8% growth as one of the fastest growing economy in the world to drive digital Bangladesh through e-governance. E-mutation warms up e-governance activities. Due to time constraint, I couldn't cover up the all important things of our initiative so far. In spite of you have a lot of tasks throwing off the mutation, which I didn't touch up or failed to make you clear. If you have any question regarding e-mutation initiatives, I am handing over to Dr. Mohammad Abdul Mannan, Additional Secretary, Sir, to clarify your questions at his level best. Before this, I want to conclude my presentation. Thank you so much for your patience and giving me the opportunity to present my topic. At last, I would like to give my heartfelt thanks to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Khan, for that that presentation. And again, this is really an important project that showcases the importance of integration of technology into public service delivery, and in particular working to enhance access for marginalized groups. And on that note, we have a question coming in from somebody from Bangladesh. Thanking you for the initiative, and saying that people still face difficulty in access to land mutation services. And he asks in particular, do you have any plan on land management of hill tracks in the hill tracks area? And maybe that's something you know a little bit more about. Or is there a different system taking place for that?
Oh, thank you. May I answer this question?
Sure, please do.
Yes, we do have a plan for the hill tracks. There are 3 districts among the 64 districts in Bangladesh. So the procedure for the land mutation or the ownership development is a little bit different in the hill districts areas. So we are now customizing. We have few offices, land offices there. So we are training them, and we are now customizing our system so that we can implement their system in the hill areas, in the hill districts particularly.
Perfect, that's great. A very direct question and direct answer. That's always appreciated. I'm wondering if any of our other panelists have any questions for our winners from Bangladesh. If not, we're running tight on time, as is always the way, so we'll move on to our next category if we don't have any other questions at the moment. But again, everybody is free to continue submitting their questions, and we can also put you in touch with the winners afterwards to continue the conversations. We only have limited time, unfortunately, on the webinar. So let me now move to our next winner under the same category, under category 4, promoting digital transformation in the public sector. We have 2 winners under this category. And we'll head first to Western Europe, to Spain, with the Ministry of Justice. Their initiative is Justica Digital, Digital Justice, a 360 vision of security. And joining us today is His Excellency, Mr. Pablo Zapatero Miguel, Secretary of State for Justice. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Well, Spain is working hard, really hard, to be a pioneering country in the application of ICT in the public administration. The process of digital transformation of our justice system has allowed us to move from a paper judicial file to an electronic judicial file, in which the processing, storage, and exchange of judicial information is carried out in digital format. This process requires a robust technological organization with all the legal and security warranties that support the operation of the administration of justice, as well as the definition of a governance model to guide the challenges of transformation and promote continuous improvement. The Spanish Justice 2030 work plan, adopted recently, was designed precisely to meet these needs. One of the principal axes of this plan was the creation of a security office, the unit responsible for offering a cybersecurity service for the administration of justice, adopting a 360-degree vision that integrates the people, the processes, and the technology in pursuit of a common goal, to protect judicial information. Allow me to seriously underline that cybersecurity and business continuity, justice continuity, if you wish, is in our view and will be a fundamental key driver of the rule of law in this century. and as such, it is already one of its critical infrastructures. In this regard, for us, law is certainly a technology, but technology, yeah, and in this particular area, cyber security, in this case, is also a critical infrastructure, as I was saying, for the proper functioning of the rule of law and within of the administration of justice. Probably we, as public decision makers in the justice area, have not been fully aware of this legal reality in the past, but the policy, in our view, has come and is here to stay, to be developed for all of us in order to deliver. For these reasons, the establishment of our security master plan was among the first projects of the office. The plan marks the roadmap and establishes the basis for compliance with current security regulations and the specific actions to undertake to protect legal information and the public service of justice. It is based on 5 fundamental pillars: compliance with security of information and personal data protection regulations, a methodological management of risks on information systems resulting in the required security measures, the implementation of the Center of Security Operations, TSO, responsible for day-to-day control of our ICT systems, services, and networks to prevent, detect, and respond to potential security incidents, as well as obviously training and security awareness of professionals such as judges, judicial staff, and technical personnel in charge of the systems, since continuously and properly trained people are the best firewall in our view. And finally, last but not least, the establishment of an information security policy for the electronic administration of justice. This initiative makes Spanish justice, in our view, faster, more efficient, more inclusive, and safer, not only for ITS users and the professionals who are related to it, but also for the society as a whole, guaranteeing access to justice for all citizens, especially those in vulnerable situations. In this way, the initiative contributes to the fulfillment of the 16 UN Sustainable Development Goals, and it is also an integral part, as I was explaining, in the Spanish Justice 2030 work plan, which is inspired and fully embedded in the regime of the UN Agenda 2030. The Ministry of Justice continues working to ensure that the consolidation of the digital transformation and justice complies with all the security measures. In this regard, efforts by the Security Office during the COVID-19 pandemic have focused on facilitating the telework to the professionals with all the security protection needed. Currently, we have had 2 million hours of telework within the system. In parallel, we continue to move forward with the actions set out in the master plan of security to increase security levels and improve the ability to react to cyber attacks and other security incidents. And finally, an innovation laboratory has been created. We are very proud about that, certainly, and with the aim of adopting disruptive technologies that will allow to provide services oriented to the intelligent management of information and data. We are profoundly grateful for the recognition to this project by this edition of the United Nations Public Service Award. For us, this recognition gives visibility to the work we have been carrying out for a decade already, and providing us for extra leverage to promote additional projects within the community of practitioners and institutions managing the administration of justice in Spain. Also, it has increased our policy impact in the area of international technical cooperation and technology transfers, as other colleagues are now interested in knowing the process carried out and the possibility of implementing it in the respective fields. So for us, this is a great honor, and it is significantly in part as a result of this award. Indeed, all our team is now eager to move further and keep on working. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, for that presentation. I have a few questions here, if you're willing to take them. So in particular, the issue of security and online privacy and cybercrime, it's such an ever-changing issue. Laws and regulations are changing all the time or being debated. I think we don't go by a day without something being in the news about privacy and data concerns. And I'm wondering how the initiative keeps up with that, and how does it kind of keep changing to reflect what's happening? And then I have a couple more questions after that.
Okay. Well, indeed, that's a key issue, and we are struggling to keep pace with the challenges that we are facing in this area. But our ministry is the ministry which has the competence for promoting legislation within the government. So I think we are well positioned in that regard. In any case, this initiative is focusing specifically not in the content with regard to what we do, but in how we do it. And in this sense, and in this area, what we are promoting from our view is a different way of looking at cybersecurity. Because for us, cybersecurity, as I was underlining, is something different that, for us, cybersecurity is part of what we should, how we should see the rule of law in the 21st century, in the sense that all those conceptions that are being a challenge for society are even improved with regard to the justice system. Because if our justice system has not proper security measures within, the rule of law is going to be biased and it's going to be seriously challenged. So in that sense, we have two areas to focus on how security affects to the functioning of the system and how we should promote security without the content of our general regulations. So it's a double challenge that we are trying to face as best as we can, because as you know, it's not so easy, because it's a very fast-moving area of legal practice.
Absolutely, and I think that that's it's also great to see that you have now also developed an innovation lab. And just a final question when it comes to the innovation lab, and you mentioned in your presentation about the transferability to national and international institutions, and that you've been talking with them about the initiative. And of course, for the UN Public Service Awards, transferability is one of the key things we also look for. Is this a project or initiative that can be used in other areas, either nationally or internationally? Can we learn from it and use it? And I'm just wondering if you can maybe tell us a little bit about the Innovation Lab, maybe peer-to-peer learning across either back in Spain or across different regions globally when it comes to the initiative.
Oh, of course, for me, it's a pleasure to give you some tips about what we are doing. I'm here with the General Director of Digital Transformation, Aitor Cubo, and Rafael Rebollo, who is the head of the Security Office. If I had to select a project connected to the Innovation Lab, I would go for data-driven policies in one sense, and the other would be identification in video conferences. I think that those are the two areas that I would say that we are more proud of. The first talk, before giving the floor to our colleagues, if it's fine with you, to my colleagues, I would say, with regard to the first one, we as a Ministry of Justice, we have been questioned in the past because we were not data-driven. We were not used to use statistics, and now we have moved towards a different stream, an open data stream in which we are sharing information and we are building infrastructures to measure what we do in an efficient way. We think that that's a key driver to deliver proper policies, and we are seriously building a project with the autonomous communities of this country and with the other institutions with this regard. That's giving us a lot of leverage in the government, because as the economic ministry is, as you know, certainly very empirically driven, they are looking to us with different eyes. So they are helping us to promote other projects. So in that sense, it's been a very successful policy in last months, and I think that we are going to be able to deliver and to present the project nationally at the end of this year. And with regard to e-identification, just allow me to say that we think that we have something here. Video conferences are what we are doing with our digital judicial activities, but the problem is that we had not proper legal infrastructures to give security and legal validity what we were doing during the COVID. By now, we have had already 100,000 hours of judicial activity, which is fully legally valid, and we are constructing a legal infrastructure, a technological infrastructure to mainstream that, and in order to do that, to move ahead, not only with regard to COVID, but to make it something which is a key part of the functioning of the administration of justice. And I think that we have something. The other administrations of the government, and in particular the general public administration, is very interested in the project, because they see that we can do with full legal validity video conferences in which we do activities that have a legal impact on the citizens, whether it is a judicial activity or whether it is an activity connected to other public administration. So our technology and this infrastructure will probably move to other ministries and other services of the administration. So we hope that this works, and our idea is to have this in the first semester of next year. And I don't know if my colleagues want to add something to that.
Just only a few things. We want to share the project. We work with another multilateral organizations, and in the ministry there is a Director General of Cooperation in Judiciary Systems. So maybe it's a good focal point to share the project and to contact, because we want to share all the project. And we work also with the CCM, the Centro Cristológico Nacional, is the body in Spain that control all cybersecurity. So the project is a big project. It's a country project. It's not just justice. It's a whole country project, and it's quite interesting. Related to your first question, the change, the challenges of the cybersecurity in this context is two pet projects that we have here in the Ministry of Justice. That is the data-driven ministry. When you change from document to data, you have to increase the cybersecurity of the system. So it's quite nice. And the other one is the electronic identification in video conference. This is the change. We change the way we relate it with others. The video conference is here and will stay. So we need an electronic identification in video conference that is purely legal. So it's a quite nice project, and we're quite proud of that. And we can share information about that kind of project without any problem, because we want to share the knowledge and the information that we have in the Ministry of Justice.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. We'll be sure to share any more information with everybody viewing, and of course on our website as well. That also provides us with a nice segue into our final speaker, or our final winner for the 2020 cycle. which comes all the way also under the same category. Category 4 comes all the way from Botswana, our only African winner for 2020, with the eTuto project, an ICT integration into teaching and learning by the Ministry of Basic Education. And here to present are Mr. Tiapio Spinksalani, Principal Education Officer, Design and Technology, and Mr. Unawasi Ninamwa, Principal Computer Programmer. And I will hand the floor over to you. Or actually me, because I'm sharing your presentation, correct?
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. I will present our initiative here. The initiative is called eTuto. eTuto, if you translate it to English, it would mean e-English. Sorry, e-education, eTuto e-education. Our initiative was ICT integration into teaching and learning, in which we designed a web-based platform that we named eTuto. Yes, can I move on? Yes, the overview. Like I was saying, our initiative is integration of ICT into teaching and learning, and also into educational management, because when you talk of curriculum delivery, you also have to have management, education management in place driving that. eTuto is a web-based educational program focusing on e-learning and educational management for our primary schools, junior and senior secondary schools in Botswana. The system consists of 2 integrated modules. We have the e-learning module, which houses e-content for different subjects offered in schools, that is in our primary, junior, and senior secondary schools. We also have another module which focuses on information management, because it's not only learning, but there is management as well. And that information has to be managed. This module, it actually merges the regional office with school into a virtual office for ease of information sharing. So at regional offices, we can easily see information that is in schools without having to write or ask for it. So that is the whole purpose of this module here. And yes, let's move on to the other. Yes, now the challenges that we were addressing when we came up with the initiative. First and foremost, they were poor academic performance. Our schools were not performing well. They're failing to meet the ministerial set target of 60% average pass mark for both the junior schools and the Botswana General Certificate Secondary Education. This is our senior schools. Of course, generally our primary schools are doing well year in, year out. So this in particular, it was to address for the junior secondary schools and the senior secondary schools. The teaching, the causes for these is that in most cases, teaching and learning methods are more teacher-centered as opposed to the learner-centered approach, which is more beneficial to learning than the teacher-centered approach. We also have a shortage of textbooks in our schools and other study materials. There was low parental involvement in the student learning. As for data, we have manual filing. Also, data access restrictions. You see, if you are using the manual filing, you don't the regional office, for example, they don't have access to a lot of information in schools because the information is filed manually in schools. Then we have data inconsistency due to delayed updates. Yes, you find that we have two similar files, one in schools and one in the regional office, and it will take time maybe to update the regional office if there was a change in schools. Limited collaboration, yes, because most of the correspondence will be through writing or telephone. Slow delivery of information. And lastly, the Ministry of Basic Education, we didn't have any platform or 21st century online platform to enhance teaching and learning. Hence, as a region, we came up with such a platform. Thank you. Yes. Now, the benefits of the system. The benefits of the system, the e-tutor system. Learners now have access to accurate subject content. Of course, with self-assessment, these are quizzes, these are assignments, and maybe in some cases tests. Developed by this content is developed by the Department of Curriculum Development and Evaluation, and of course, teachers across schools and regions. There is collaboration with different stakeholders through forums, tutoring, chats, and messaging. The system has forums, it has tutoring, it has chats, and you can actually message to mobile phones through the system, and from mobile phones to the system, just like that. It allows parental involvement in learner education. From their mobile phones or computers, parents can actually access the progress reports for their kids. They can see the assignments that are given to students. They can also message, irrespective of their location. This would also cover one area that would come at the end to the marginalized, because it doesn't matter in which area you are, you can always use this system. It has improved record keeping. Information is updated all the time. There is easy retrieval of data, and it is secure. There is professional development for both teaching and non-teaching staff, because after we developed this system, we trained our staff on how to use the system to benefit the entire regional office, including schools. And as a result of this, communication has improved. There is also adherence to set standards. What are these set standards? The government policy that all the ministries have to automate their functions. And by so doing, we were actually automating some of our functions in the ministry, therefore adhering to the set government standards. Lastly but not least, this came with reduced operational costs. In some instances, schools would actually get some systems that are developed by individual or some companies that come with costs, the money that is not there in schools. But this was developed by officers in the system, officers who actually understand the challenges of the ministry, the challenges of the region, scratching where it is itching. So with that, it drastically reduced the operational costs. And this platform empowers users with the 21st century skills also to be globally competitive. Yes. Now, who is the target for our system. The targeted groups are as follows. It's a large group. We are targeting actually the whole region. The whole region. The regional office, administrators and managers. This would include school principals, primary schools, secondary schools, teachers, learners, and of course parents. Currently, the system is accessed by all schools, including those in rural areas that are connected to the government data network. You'll see later how we are going to maybe reach out to other schools that are not connected to the government data network. Yes. Yeah. Now, coming to the sustainable development goals that are being addressed by this initiative. Number one is the number one goal for the SDGs, no poverty. As it says, no poverty. To end poverty, everyone should have basic health care, security, and education. Our system is an educational system. It's an educational system. Education, goal number 4. Education. The UN wants everyone to have access to inclusive, equitable, quality education. Excuse me. Our system covers all schools and learners. And it doesn't actually select any learner. It's to be used by all the learners, all the teachers, and all the government schools. We can continue to the next slide. Future plans for the system or for eTuto. Like I said earlier on, that the system, excuse me, the system is hosted on the government data network, and we intend to migrate it to the public domain so that it can be accessed by all stakeholders. That is our primary schools and majority of the parents that are not on government data network. We also intend to add more modules so as to automate the functions of the ministry. As for now, you can see there are only 2 modules, the e-learning and data management. We need to add other functions of the ministry like supplies or inventory, development services, transport, out of school programs, and any other programs that are there in the ministry. We also intend to link or integrate the system with other government systems. Yes, like for instance, for the parents to access the system, they do it through their ID numbers. But instead of us having to capture those IDs and into our system, we want just to link to the national ID system where when they punch it, they are verified by that system itself. And in that regard, it would make work easier for us here because the work is already done by another government department. And every parent it's a requirement that they should have an ID. Yes. Yeah. Now, finally on our presentation, the project reception in the country after winning the United Nations Public Service Awards. It was a party in the country. The team was congratulated from the Office of the President by the Minister of Presidential Affairs, Governance and Public Administration, Honorable Honorable Moraing, Cabo Moraing. Guys, help me, yes, Cabo Moraing. So he congratulated us, and not only him, but the Director of Public Service Management, Mrs. Mo Salakatani, she also congratulated us. The Permanent Secretary in our ministry, the Ministry of Basic Education, also congratulated the team for winning the award. And thereafter, the Office of the President advised that the initiative should be rolled out to other schools nationally because it can help them in introducing or integrating ICT into teaching and learning, which of course is a government policy. The Ministry of Basic Education has since adopted the system, and plans to roll it out nationally are advanced and is not in our hands now. It has been given to the Department of ICT and Media Services. This is at a higher level at headquarters so that it can be rolled out to other schools in other regions. And last but not least, after winning the awards, other sections in the ministry and other departments in the country, they were very much interested in the system, and schools in other regions, they wanted to implement it straight, taking it from us, but we had to hand it to headquarters so that they can roll it over for everyone. So the system basically is highly appreciated, and even today, we got a communication from headquarters. They are now compiling data of ICT equipment so that schools are ready to receive this system as it is being rolled out nationally. We also ready to train other regions as the team that designed the system, and we are open to anyone from any country, especially in the SADC region or Southern Africa, to assist and or even share the benefits of the system. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for listening to our presentation, and also take this opportunity to thank the UN team for having recognized us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Solani. I think that's a really good example of transferability and partnership to see an initiative like that be rolled out across the country, and to have other countries also interested is really central to what we also try to do with the awards in terms of promoting good practices and how they can kind of take on another life after the awards. I have one question, and then we're going to have to move on to our next section because we're short on time. But I have a question regarding, it says, what was the impact of Ithuto in terms of the SDG 4 indicators? Is the impact equally distributed between male and female learners? And what about learners with disabilities? Have they been able to benefit from the program? It's a lot of questions in one, actually. And has e-learning reduced the impact of existing school meal programs? So I think kind of maybe just to sum it up generally, how have you been able to use the SDG 4 indicators for the project? And how have you been able to kind of deal with the issue of inequality, whether it comes to better including girls and young women, or persons with disabilities, or vulnerable young people in the program?
Yeah, thank you. I think I got you, and our system is quite weak here. But for the SDGs, yes, like I said, our main one, basically, first we're answering Development Goal number 4, which is on education. And with that, we were really addressing education systems, and to cover everyone. Of course, for now, we haven't covered all the disabled or the people with the learners with disability, because our system for now, it doesn't cover with hearing impairment and maybe those with sight challenges. But we have since been approached by the Department of Curriculum and Development that we work on that. And us, my team, we didn't have any specialists to that regard, but they have specialists and we'll be working with them to take care of that. But as for generally equitable of education, our system is for all the learners in all our schools, and it is for the government, and it doesn't require any payment. For the parents to access this, they do not need to pay anything. So whether disadvantaged or not, they would have access to the system. And I think generally that's how the system functions and how equitable it is, Elizabeth.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Solani. I'll take one final question from John. I see he has his hand up. John, would you like to ask your question briefly before we move on?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes.
Elizabeth, you are asking me, you are instructing me to ask one question.
Oh, well, you had your hand up, but maybe it was by mistake.
Yes, but they were two questions, not one. So let me ask one before you stop me. In Botswana, I know the problem of internet penetration in African countries and the expense, because most internet providers are still private, and the control of how much they cost their services is not pocket friendly in many countries. So in this light, is access to internet in Botswana so extensive that it enables every family to have access to, for example, this excellent service you are providing? That's the first question to you specifically. But I had a question to everyone who has presented, and how after you win this prestigious award, therefore demonstrating your excellence, how do you make sure that this reaches every public servant in the country? Because this is what you illustrate, that public servants are not as ineffective or inefficient or non as many people think. How do you get these initiatives that are excellent to be celebrated by all public servants and to have influence on their thinking, so that they realize that they can actually be innovative, so that they get energized? If we could have some of you giving us an idea of how these public service awards that you win influences the rest of the public servants, not in your initiative or even your ministry, but the entire public service of the country.
Yeah, thank you, John, for the two questions. The first one is on internet penetration, families having access to internet. Yeah, of course, you know that well, that yes, in Africa, particularly I'll talk for my country, it's not every family that will have access to internet. But generally, through their mobile phones, a lot of them, they can access internet. I don't have the percentage that can do it, but I would say the majority of our people in our country can access. But that there will be some learners that will not have internet from home. The government now takes over that all the schools are connected to the internet. For instance, now about all 100% of our secondary schools, they have Wi-Fi, they have access to internet, all our secondary schools, junior and secondary. And the majority of our primary schools, they are also connected to the internet now. I don't know of any, we have very few that are not connected in our schools, maybe one or two in our region, but basically a high percentage, of course, is connected in our country. So that for those learners that do not have access to internet, can actually get it at school. And what the government, in partnership with the private sector and government parastatals, for the schools in the rural areas, they've partnered, and most of those primary schools are now connected to the internet, because that's where mostly people are disadvantaged, and they made sure that those are actually connected to the internet in the rural areas. And moving on to the last one, as to how other public servants celebrate these. Yes, it might not be much, but in our case here, what happened, the win was announced by the minister, like I said earlier on, during the Public Service Day. And this is a speech that is actually broadcast nationally on television for everyone to listen to. And in addition to that, the newspapers, we were on television, the government, social media or social hands handling that very well, and it was on newspapers for quite a long time. Basically, a lot was covered to know that our team actually did well with our initiative at the United Nations level. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Solani. We are running incredibly behind on time, so I will say, if either of our winners want to maybe give a 1 or 2 sentence response to John's question on how to kind of inspire other public servants with work, then please raise your hand and I can give you the floor. Anybody have any inspiring words to say? If not, then I will thank all of our 7 winners for their really inspiring presentations today, showing a real variety of work across not only all the categories, but of course all of the goals, and integrating lots of various different aspects into each of those initiatives. I think it's a nice way for us to move on to the next segment of the program, which is on the 2021 cycle, and gives us some nice examples and inspiration of the types of initiatives that we're really kind of looking to recognize and show up as examples of how we can really work better towards the Sustainable Development Goals. So thank you all for your initiatives, and hopefully you'll be able to stay with us as well and learn more about the 2021 process, although your initiatives are not eligible to receive an award again, but still. So on that note, I would like to move to a more technical direction with the webinar. We want to provide some information and tips for people considering applying for the 2021 process, which the deadline is the 18th of November. So hopefully this should give you a little bit of advance notice on kind of what to do and answer some of your more pressing questions. And to kick off, I'd like to hand the floor back to John Mary Kauzia and to Ms. Katie Gifford, Policy Specialist in the Governance and National Planning Office of UN Women. UN Women have partnered with UNDESA for the past number of years on the UNPSA to support efforts to advance gender responsive service delivery and governance. So we're really delighted that UN Women are again this year working with us in helping with the category on gender responsive service delivery. Both John and Katie will give us an overview of the 4 categories we have for 2020, and will also provide some examples of the types of initiatives that might fit under each of those categories. So John, I'll hand the floor first to you, and I'll also pull up a PowerPoint as we do that.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you very much, everyone who has made the presentation and those who have asked questions and those who are listening. As Elizabeth says, this now is more on the technical side, giving tips on how and what innovations to nominate. Just to introduce this, let me say that as we continue to receive nominations for the United Nations Public Service Awards, there are biases that are keeping away some nominations. And some of these are like countries which are the least developed tend to think that they cannot come up with innovations. And so you find that we have very few nominations from those countries. I would want to say that that's a misconception. What we have learned from the United Nations Public Service Awards since 2003 is that innovations come from all countries, developed and developed, big and small. And so public servants should be encouraged to think and see what they are doing in new ways or in terms of services themselves, and do not be discouraged by the fact that they are from least developed countries and they can't win. Elizabeth, if you can put on the bullets for category 1. Category 1, which is fostering innovation to deliver inclusive and equitable services for all, including digital transformation. This category promotes innovative ways to increase access to quality and affordable public services, especially to those living in poverty and the most vulnerable. Now, when we say that, it doesn't mean that if you have an innovation that you are really convinced it is very, very good, but then it is not targeting poverty, most vulnerable, you don't present it. No, we insist on most vulnerable and poverty because, as you know, this is the biggest challenge in the world. But some innovations can be very successful even when they are not targeting poverty. The main thing is quality, affordability, and that can benefit all. It also targets delivering inclusive and equitable services in the public sector, both reform and transform their service delivery mechanisms so as to be effective and efficient. I want you to pay attention to the difference between effectiveness and efficiency, especially in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, which sustainable development focuses on people, while efficiency focuses on institutions, on the inside of the institutions, how institutions operate. So when you are looking at innovations, you need to take care to see whether you are innovating for purposes of your institution or innovating for purposes of benefit to the people outside the institution. Of course, as you have noted, and now you have got many cases which show that ICT or digital government has helped in many innovations, but we need to bear in mind that just putting service delivery into ICT does not necessarily make it innovative. It has to be, in the first instance, excellent in terms of quality, affordability, accessibility, and the people targets. And if it uses ICT, that's where and good. I mean, for example, the cases we have just had, the one on justice from, was it Spain or Portugal? the one from Botswana on education, and the fact that they are using ICT alone is not the main issue. The fact that they have improved the delivery of services is the key issue. So that's why we always say including using ICT. There was a time in the history of the Public Service Awards when we had a category on digital government, the use of ICT. But now we have mainstreamed it, integrated it in all categories. So focus on user needs and public service design and delivery, rather than on just digital solutions is the main thing. Themes of inclusion, equity, integration, and diversity are at the center of delivering people-centric services. And that's the key. And this can be any service. The good thing is that we have the Sustainable Development Goals, which are specific in terms of focusing to services. Can I have the one on category 2? Enhancing the effectiveness of public institutions to reach SDGs. Again, you notice that it is about institutions, transparency and accountability in institutions, harmonizing and collaborating government agencies. Integration, as you know, is a principle in the 2030 agenda. It's a key principle. But you notice that the focus is on effectiveness as opposed to efficiency. I don't want to go into the conceptual things, but if you read the 2030 agenda documents, you will note that the word reform sort of started disappearing and the term transformation appeared very, very strongly in the 2030 agenda. Just because reform was focusing on efficiency, which is an institutional-centric concept, and focusing more on transformation, especially to focus on people. That's why the effectiveness is the terminology that is used when we are referring to promoting institutional frameworks to make them effective. Transparency and accountability is very key in that category, which means issues of participation in decision making and people engagement and government data that are open are very, very key. I think the main thing here that differentiates category 2 and category 1 has to do with the institution itself, its integration, the way it is harmonized with government policies, the collaboration and participation of the people, and then transparency and accountability are the key things that determine whether that's a good initiative or not. But of course, if that happens where the service is poor, then the ultimate goal of having an effective institution is lost. So still, the delivery of services comes in very, very, very strongly. Can I have category 3?
Category three is will be presented by Katie, John.
Yeah, category 4. Actually, category 4 is more problematic in our case. And I think I had touched on category 4 in my opening remarks, because this is the newest category we have introduced for 2021, institutional preparedness and response in times of crisis. And I know that many potential nominations will be thinking in terms of how they have handled the COVID-19 and the pandemic. That's well and good, but we need to bear in mind that there has been and there will be other crises and pandemics. In my lifetime, the one I can very quickly think about was the 2008 financial crisis, which was global. I think there was a crisis, a food crisis in Africa. I don't remember the year it was, whether it was before 2008 or after. So when one is thinking about this, one should not limit the initiatives to be nominated only to those responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. That's the first point I want to make. The second one is that the COVID-19 pandemic is an ongoing crisis, and it is demonstrating its ability to keep shifting up and down, up and down, up and down. What succeeds today is rendered a failure tomorrow. And therefore, this is where one has to be careful to celebrate before the pandemic is completely done with. In that case, the initiatives that will most likely be successful are those from public institutions which had been ongoing even before the crisis, and they have consequently helped those governments, those countries to be prepared to handle this current crisis. Now, what the examples I can give, I don't want to say these are the examples that need to be nominated, because then I might declare them winners before they even get nominated. But for example, there has been in many governments budgetary crisis. Immediately, people started reallocating budgets because of the immediate needs of the pandemic. For example, here in the US, there is already a quarrel between the Senate, the White House, and the Congress about what they call, I've forgotten the term, but the quarrel is about the money they need to distribute in the population to mitigate the effects of this pandemic. Now, you can compare that with some other governments, I don't want to mention them, which already had budgetary provisions that immediately catered for the emergency. In other words, they had already in their laws, in their budget frameworks, provisions for emergencies. And when the crisis hit, this pandemic hit, immediately those laws were invoked, those budgetary frameworks were invoked, and there was no need to start quarreling between the executive and the parliament on whether to approve or not to approve an extra budget for this. So you have cases like those. I think they are the ones which can be very useful for us when we are preparing to advise the world in terms of how governments can be prepared in times of crisis. Now, talking about advising the world, maybe I should say to you that while for you, you may nominate an initiative and you keep on anxious that you win an award for motivating public servants at home, that's well and good. But from our side, we go beyond that. That's how we learn how public administration and public service delivery in the world is evolving. And that's how we reach a point where we can advise governments that in order to be prepared for any future crisis, you need to look at A, B, C, D in your governance system. And if necessary, we can quote an example and say, for example, country A didn't face crisis X while other countries were suffering from crisis because it had mechanisms A, B, C, D. So such initiatives are the ones that we will be looking for in this category 4 on preparedness. I think I have been going around. I don't know whether I have been clear on that, but in case you have questions, we will clarify.
Yeah, thank you, John. Just because we're quite short on time, I think we'll move on to category 3 with Katie Gifford from UN Women, and then we'll take any questions on all the categories maybe at the end of that or after we've done the other technical session. So I'll hand the floor over to you, Katie, and I'll put the slide back onto category 3.
Thanks so much. First, I want to express UN Women's thanks for the kind invitation to join today's webinar and certainly extend our congratulations to all of the 2020 winners. It was a thrill to hear about these important initiatives. So I'll try to be brief, but just wanted to touch on a few key points with regard to the category 3 of the 2021 UNPSA, which is focusing on gender responsive public services to really meet the needs of women and girls. And as Elizabeth said, UN Women has been working closely with UNPSA and really leading this gender category of the UN Public Service Award since 2011. And we see this as an important part of collective efforts to advance gender responsive governance, as well as to support the design and delivery of public services that respond to the diversity of priorities and needs of all people, with a focus, of course, on women and girls who we know oftentimes are left behind. And I just wanted to emphasize a few points here in terms of what do we actually mean when we talk about gender responsive public services and why they matter. And I think this came out quite clearly even today in the presentation of the different initiatives, the questions that arose about how gender equality is being considered, the different factors that affect women and men differently, whether it be around education or public policy, legislative action. So really, when we're talking about this, we're looking at public services that are designed and delivered as well as evaluated through a gender lens, so using gender analysis. And we know that these services are vital to fulfill the human rights of women, as well as to really meet the needs of women and girls on the ground, again, in all of their diversity. And I think important here to mention that the potential of gender responsive public services to really be transformative, and transformative by addressing and hopefully as well redressing social and economic inequalities, including structural inequality. So this is about services that effectively free up women and girls' time for educational and economic opportunities, in part by reducing workloads, demands for unpaid care work, domestic work at the household and community level. And that can range from policy change, legislative change, changes in forms of public administration, as well as direct service delivery. And as many colleagues have referenced, John just now, in terms of category 4, the 2021 UNPSA is going to be delivered in the midst of our responding to and hopefully starting to recover from a global pandemic. And we at UN Women, as well as many others, have demonstrated through analysis the disproportionate impact this crisis is having on women and girls. And I think even more importantly now than ever, although it's important always, that we really elevate and promote gender responsive public services in this context, especially as John was just referencing, governments are grappling with limited budgetary resources, and they're really just highlighting the essential nature of public services to really address and meet the needs of women and girls. And I just quickly wanted to touch on kind of what types of initiatives fit within this category. So I've made mention of several of these, but just to kind of broaden our scope a bit, to just emphasize that this is inclusive of, issues and initiatives that focus on strengthening women's decision-making power, policy efforts, for example, to reduce gender pay gaps and other policy action, as well as targeted service delivery in areas that range from the prevention of violence against women, digital skills building, digital technology, agriculture, health, education, and really run across all different sectors. And just to emphasize that there's no sort of one or two sectors that are meaningful when it comes to this, but it really ranges across all. And then I also just wanted here to briefly talk about gender mainstreaming in the other categories. I think this is quite important. As again, we heard today, gender responsive public services, we are taking a two-pronged approach here. We're looking at a targeted category, as well as really emphasizing, making sure that gender is considered in all of the other categories. And I know that this at times can seem perhaps challenging to do, but I think just pushing ourselves when we look at the initiatives that we're putting forward in the respective categories that are being nominated, to ask key questions about gender mainstreaming and pushing beyond just sort of looking at, has this initiative kind of avoided discriminating against women, but asking questions like, were women and diversity of women across all different kind of socioeconomic backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, levels of access, et cetera, consulted and included in the design of the initiative? So were their voices really part of the decision making around what the initiative would do and how it would target the specific area? Have these perspectives, this type of analysis, been included in the actual delivery of the initiative? And then really importantly, in terms of monitoring and evaluating results, are those gender impacts and how the initiative is or isn't addressing gender equality being assessed as part of the results and monitoring and evaluation? And that's of critical importance, because then that information can really inform how initiatives are refined, revised, in order to ensure that they are in fact delivering results for all people, women and men, boys and girls, in their diversity. So I think I'll pause and stop there, but certainly happy to answer any questions that may come up on this category. Thanks so much again.
Thanks so much, Katie, for the overview of the category and, of course, importantly, the gender mainstreaming aspect throughout all of the categories. I'm just going to check if we have any questions. I know that you have to leave us soon. We do have one question. Okay, but this actually goes back to this issue of kind of what category to submit something under. So it asks if a state policy which focuses on women and girls generating livelihood options be nominated under 3 or under 1. But I think this is something we can actually clear up a little bit later, because I'm not sure a policy in general would suffice. But I think that this is something that comes up quite often. If you're unsure as to what category it goes under, you're of course more than welcome to contact us directly. But I would generally say if your initiative falls under a number of categories, go with the one that it most relevantly links to. Because when we're evaluating the nominations, we can't then say, oh, well, actually this fits better under category 2, let's move it. Once it's submitted under one category, we have to evaluate it under just that category. But I think if there are any doubts as to an initiative, then please contact us and we can maybe help clarify that a little bit as well. So I think, Katie, I know that you have to leave. So I will thank you very much for your presentation and for also clarifying the mainstreaming aspect. And if there are any additional questions afterwards, we'll be sure to follow up with you on that.
That sounds great. I'm available, of course. And thanks so much again.
Great. Thanks, Katie. And then I don't know if anybody had any questions for John and the other 3 categories. I can't really see anything coming in right now. But of course, again, we'll clarify some of that as we go forward through the technical aspect of the next session. John, anything you wanted to add as we move on to the next session?
Not really.
Okay.
Except on this question of this specific question, I think if a policy focusing on women and girls, from what I'm seeing, it seems the initiative is being done by women and girls and benefiting all the rest. So the award wouldn't be focusing on those who do it, it would be focusing on those who benefit. If it was the other way around, somebody doing a policy benefiting women in terms of them receiving services, then you would choose to put it in the category on gender. But if it is a group of women, let's say providing better ways of education or better ways of water management or better ways of environment, then you can present it as a service delivery initiative as opposed to a gender sensitive initiative. As Elizabeth said, you have to see from your side which does it benefit. Is it serving the public or serving the public but with a focus on serving women?
Maybe, sorry, Elizabeth and John, may I just come in here before I go, just maybe to add a bit of additional clarification?
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. First, I think, to John's point, I think certainly if the policy is aimed at, you know, women and girls, and in particular if it's talking about generating livelihood options, I think there's certain reasons why and justification why that would and could fit under category 3. And as I mentioned, policy action and sort of supportive policy frameworks that are being implemented by public actors and public servants and public administrations certainly should be considered within the context of the gender category as well. And I think we want to really broaden beyond just direct service delivery, although that's critical and essential, because when we're talking about gender mainstreaming, we are talking about how women are included in, integrated in, and really decision makers in policy making as well as policy kind of action. So I think certainly as kind of thinking through where an initiative fits best, it's important to ask those questions. But I also think that if it's aimed at sort of gender responsive action, it could certainly fit under category 3. So thanks so much.
Great, thank you, Katie, for clarifying that. So if we've no further questions or comments for this section, we are incredibly behind time. I think we should all be having our coffee now, by now, but we do have one technical session left, which we will now move on to. And I will basically go through some of the key questions that we receive when it comes to submitting a nomination for the UNPSA. And if there's anything, please, again, anybody who's still listening, please feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A box, and my colleague Nosifo will present those to me either during or at the end of this session. So let me see. Okay. Okay, so as John and Katie outlined, there are four categories for the 2021 cycle. The deadline for applying is the 18th of November, so you still have plenty of time to kind of get your nominations ready. And hopefully this next session will go through some of the trickier questions that we often get. If I can get it moving. So the UNPSA is available in 6 of the UN official languages. On top of that, there are submission guidelines, an applicant's manual, and the nomination questions before you apply that you can take a look at on our website. So we would ask that before you begin your application that you familiarize yourself with, in particular, the 4 categories of this year, along with the eligibility criteria, some of which I'll go through now. But really being aware of what the 4 categories are and the type of initiatives that fall under it or could fall under it will really help strengthen your application when you go to presenting your initiative. And as I said, and you can see, these are available in all 6 UN official languages, at least for the submission guidelines. So the eligibility criteria, so who can nominate? And this is quite a frequent question that we get. There can be both self-nomination or you can be nominated by a third party. Third parties include public sector institutions, schools of public administration, UN agencies, so long as the UN agency has not also been a partner in that initiative, universities, NGOs, and private sector entities. Individual, we get this asked quite a lot, individuals cannot nominate or be nominated for the UNPSA, so keep that also in mind. And And who can be nominated? Again, it's all public sector institutions at the national, subnational, and local level from UN member states. In the case of public-private partnerships, these are acceptable, but it is the lead nominee that must be the public sector institution. It cannot be the private sector institution that is the lead one being nominated. And again, individuals cannot be nominated. When it comes to the eligibility of the initiative, there are also some criteria. The initiative must be innovative and it must be relevant to one of the UNPSA categories. And again, if you have any questions about perhaps which category your initiative might fall under, please feel free to contact us directly through our email, which we'll provide at the end of this session. The initiative must have been implemented for a minimum of 2 years. So again, this has to be implementation, not just design. It has to have been running for at least 2 years by the time you submit the application. So by the 18th of November, it has to have been up and running for at least 2 years. It must not have already won a UN Public Service Award, and it must not be implemented by the UN system, so we can avoid any conflict of interest. So they're really the key criteria when it comes to your initiative and who can nominate or be nominated. Application is possible in all 6 UN official languages. English and French are the working languages of the United Nations, so we certainly encourage applications in those 2 languages for ease of evaluation, but all 6 languages we accept nominations in. This includes your supporting documentation, and I think this is probably most relevant to the reference letters and the evaluation report that we ask that nominations also are accompanied by. We need them in, particularly the reference letters, in one of the UN official languages or a translation of them. In the case of the evaluation report, often these evaluation reports can be quite long, which we understand. If the evaluation report is not in one of the 6 official UN languages, we ask for at least a summary to be translated into an official language, so perhaps the executive summary. And of course, the submission must be completed in full with all required supporting documentation, and we cannot receive documentation after you submit. Everything needs to go in at the same time. So there are 4 key parts to the nomination form, which you can find on our website. Registration and basic information are the first 2 parts. I'm not going to go through those in detail because they're pretty self-explanatory. There's also information about those processes in our applicant's manual, which is also available on our website. The 2 parts which are of most interest to us today are part 3, the nomination questions and how to best kind of approach those, and part 4, the documentation and references and what they require. So the nomination questions, so this will be what they will look like when you open up after you've logged in and registered. First of all, to clarify, if you are nominating a third party, then you need to provide the information of both who you're nominating and who you are as a nominator. If the nominator is not the institution being nominated, you fill this in. If it's the same, then you just proceed. Then we move on to more of the substantive questions. So the first question is around the objective of the initiative. So here we ask for you to briefly describe the initiative, what issue or challenge it aims to address, and specify its objectives. What we're really looking for here in a nutshell is what the initiative is about. You should be able to very clearly, very quickly let the evaluator know in this question what the initiative aims to do and who it targets. So it has to be kind of like what they call the elevator pitch of, tell me in 5 minutes what your project does. This should be very, very clear so that going forward, the evaluator knows what they're dealing with from the get-go. Question 2 concerns alignment with the selected category. Again, we really recommend that you read through the submission guidelines that we have on our website in each of the languages in depth. Here you get a full description of each of the 4 categories, along with the broader context of the SDGs. And so after you've done that, what you really want to do is describe how the initiative fits under the category that you're putting it through. You don't have to, it doesn't have to address every element that we mentioned in the category description, but it should fit under the core and it should touch on some of the elements and be very, very clear about how it does that. And again, if it fits under more than one category, choose the category that is most, that you think is most relevant to your initiative. Question 3, moving on, is alignment with the 2030 agenda. Again, we restructured the program a number of years ago to align very strongly with the 2030 agenda, and we want to see how all of the initiatives that are submitted are really contributing to the 17 SDGs and the principles of the agenda more broadly. When you are submitting your basic information for the initiative, you're asked to select which SDGs and which targets the initiative aligns to. So in this question here, you can again talk about the SDGs and targets that the initiative supports and describe how it kind of works towards those goals and targets. Staying under the same category, but a subsection B, we want to know what makes the initiative sustainable in social, economic, and environmental terms. This is different to what makes the initiative sustainable in financial terms, which is talking more about resources, and that's something that we deal with later in the questionnaire. What we really want to know here is, and this again links to the 2030 agenda, how is this initiative sustainable in terms of social inclusion, environmental protection, economic development? How is it really contributing to those kind of aspects of the 2030 agenda from more of a development aspect? So this really doesn't concern the financial aspect here. And then we stick again with the 2030 agenda and the principle of leaving no one behind. And we have a few questions under question 4 on this. The first question is, how has this initiative addressed a significant shortfall in governance, public administration, or public service within the context of a given country or region? And so the idea here is this initiative should have made a significant impact on groups or population and address a significant gap or issue of public concern within the context. So we're really looking here for the initiative to tell us how they identified something that was kind of missing or lacking in terms of public service delivery, public administration and governance, and how it sought to address that. So what it did to kind of fill in this gap. And then we heard from Katie from UN Women speaking about the aspect of gender equality or gender mainstreaming. Gender mainstreaming was an issue that we, or a question that we introduced to the UNPSA last year in 2020. So this will be the second year that we have mainstreamed it throughout all the categories. And she gave you a lot of detail on kind of how to address that, but we really want to see if the initiative demonstrates how it targets or engages women and girls. So that can also be in the design of and planning of an initiative, for example, even if it doesn't specifically deal on the kind of output level with girls and young women, but how they were engaged in maybe design and planning, or how it targets gender inequality in its output or various cycles. So we're really looking at kind of I think what we noticed last year with a lot of the submissions was that people often said, well, we don't discriminate against girls and women, but we want to go beyond that. We want to see really what you're doing to either engage them in the planning or design or development, or as a target group. And then speaking of target groups, we want to know specifically which target groups the initiative works towards. And this really, again, links to the SDGs and the idea of ensuring the inclusion of vulnerable and marginalized people and of leaving no one behind. So who are your target groups? How are you working with these target groups? And what are the improved outcome for these target groups in terms of the initiative? And the more specific I think you can get, keeping within the word limit, the better. Question 5 concerns implementation. We want to know how the initiative has been implemented, including its key developments, steps, monitoring, evaluation, and the chronology. The easiest way often to do this is through a timeline approach. I think we saw it in Mexico's presentation when they were presenting how they implemented their initiative. But we really want to kind of see kind of from beginning to end how the initiative took shape, what the key milestones were, when, who was involved, how it was monitored and evaluated. And of course, any partners that were involved. And then the obstacles. We do want to know what challenges your initiative faced. I think some people are sometimes reluctant to address the challenges and obstacles that their initiative might have faced. But this is something that we're looking at, not to kind of find faults in the initiative, but to see how overcoming those challenges and obstacles really helped you improve the initiative. I certainly had challenges and obstacles preparing this webinar today, and I hope that in overcoming those I kind of have, you know, experiences that I can use going forward. So that's really what we're looking for. It's certainly not a trick question by any means, but we want to know how overcoming those challenges informed your initiative, how it helped strengthen the initiative. Maybe you had to change something because you realized that target group A wasn't responding to whatever your intervention was. So we want to see kind of how you learned and overcame some of those challenges going forward. Number 6, moving on to innovation. And of course, the UNPSA is all about innovation. And there are 3 questions under question 6 on innovation. And the first one is, please explain the ways your initiative is innovative in the context of your country and region. So really, the initiative should present an innovative idea, policy, new approach, or a unique mechanism that supports the 2030 agenda. In the context of its given country or region, it could be to improve delivery of public services, solve a problem of public concern, or strengthen public institutions. What's important here is the in the context of a given country or region. Your initiative doesn't have to be the most original idea in the entire world. It could easily be something that has something similar has taken place in maybe another region or country, but it really should be innovative in its context. So in your region, in your country, in your locality, and be adapted and tweaked to really target the target groups that you're working with there. And so when the evaluators are evaluating the nomination forms, they again are looking at it through the lens of country or region, not comparing it with other initiatives in a different region. And then this kind of follows on from that. Describe how the initiative drew inspiration from successful initiatives in other regions, countries, and localities. So we really promote the idea of peer-to-peer learning and knowledge sharing with the UNPSA. So if we hear that your initiative has been inspired by another initiative that maybe won the UNPSA a few years ago, I mean, that's great for us to learn about, to see how that knowledge is being shared and used to be adapted and tweaked to programs in different countries and different regions. So, question C under innovation is a new question that we've brought in for 2021, and it revolves around emerging and frontier technologies. So if these were used, please state how they were integrated into the initiative, and or if the initiative embraced digital government. Some of you might remember that in previous years, we've had a category specifically on digital government and new technologies, but increasingly, as digital government new technology is being used to deliver services and enhance public administration across all areas of public service delivery and governance, we decided that we too would integrate it and mainstream it across the 4 categories of the UNPSA for this year. If your initiative is not using any new technologies or digital government, and of course, as John mentioned earlier, innovation doesn't have to mean using the newest and the brightest technology about, that's fine. This is a question that if it's not applicable, you don't lose any points in the evaluation process from it. So if it's not applicable, that's fine. Adaptability, we heard a lot by the 2020 winners on how they were really transferring their initiatives to other regions or localities or countries. And this is something we really also try to promote through the UNPSA. So we ask, has the initiative been transferred or adapted to other contexts? So the idea is that we want initiatives that can be used and tweaked and adapted in various settings across all regions and levels and across all areas. So we'd like information on this. If that at this point isn't possible, we also want to know in that case, well, what is its potential for adaptability and transferability? So talking about how it could easily maybe be transferred to another region or to another topic area is what we would like to know about. Question 8 is on resources. So what specific resources are used to implement the initiative? Resources can be financial, human, or other. It can include new or existing budgets. It can include staff time, volunteer time. It can include venues, equipment. You know, the sky's the limit, really, in terms of what you define as resources. So we just kind of generally want to know what the input is now and perhaps also going forward. And then please explain what makes the initiative sustainable over time in financial and institutional terms. So you'll remember at the beginning of this presentation, I spoke about what makes it sustainable in social, economic, environmental terms. So this really focuses on the finances. Is there financing in place? Are there institutional structures or issues in place that can help the initiative be sustainable? So this might be specific budget lines that have been set up to support the initiative. It might be certain policies or regulations that have been set up to inscribe the initiative into the institutional structure. So we just kind of want to know where it's positioned and essentially kind of what support it has for long-term implementation. And then moving on to the evaluation, this is a question we get a lot of questions about, and we ask, was the initially formally evaluated or either internally or externally? For your submission to be considered eligible, it needs to be accompanied by an evaluation. The evaluation can be internal or external, but we want details on who evaluated it and how it was evaluated. And you will be asked later in the submission process to attach the evaluation report. So all nominations must be accompanied by an evaluation report. But I'll go into more details about what the evaluation entails later. Based on that, we ask what the main findings of the evaluation are and how this information is being used to inform the initiative's implementation. So here we're really looking at the scope, the methodology, the indicators used, the key findings and recommendations of the evaluation on the initiative. And again, we want to know, similar to the challenges, how has the information that the evaluation throws up, how is that being used going forward to enhance the initiative? Institutional setup. So please describe how the initiative is inscribed in the relevant institutional landscape. So we basically want to know where the initiative sits institutionally. Is it working in an integrated manner? How does it operate both horizontally and vertically with other departments and agencies at the local and national level, for example, in decision-making, planning, engagement, implementation? Has the initiative been supported by designated budgets, regulations, or policies? So we just kind of want to have a good overview of where it sits in terms of kind of broader institutional structures. We're nearly there, 2 more questions. Question 11 is on stakeholder engagement. This is a very important question. We want to put an emphasis here on collaboration, engagement, partnerships, which is all part of the 2030 agenda. So we want to know what stakeholders were engaged in the entire cycle of the initiative, from designing, implementation, all the way through to evaluation, and how this engagement took place. So this goes beyond internal government or institutional partners. We really want to know how broader civil society was involved. So external stakeholders and target groups, that can be from the private sector, civil society, NGOs, but in particular the target group of the initiative as well, how they were engaged as stakeholders in various aspects of the initiative cycle. And how was it through online consultations, in-person meetings? Is there certain mechanisms set up, decision-making or design mechanisms set up that involve multi-stakeholders? So we just want to have a good solid idea about how that engagement took place. And then finally, the lessons learned. So as we all know, initiatives adapt and change over time to respond to changing situations. I think this year in particular, we're very aware of that. As do the needs and the lessons that come out of that. So we want to know what the key lessons have been in the implementation of the initiative, and again, how these are being used to enhance the initiative going forward. These may have been challenges overcome, or it could be feedback from target groups or through stakeholder engagement. But we kind of want to know what you're learning from it that can help enhance going forward. So there are the 12 key questions. After you've answered those, you will be asked to proceed to documentation and references, and you will come to a page that looks like this. So there are a few documents that are necessary to submit with the nomination. Number one is the evaluation report, which I've touched upon. So again, this can be an internal or external evaluation, such as an audit report or similar documentation. The evaluation report must include an executive summary, scope, so it must tell us what the evaluation aims to measure, methods, how the evaluation is conducted, telling us what methodology was used, and it must also have findings and recommendations, so main findings of the evaluation, the recommendations, the outcomes essentially of the report. Again, this should be presented preferably in one of the UN's 6 official languages, but again, with bigger, particularly formal evaluations, we understand that may not always be the case, but in that case, the executive summary must be submitted in an official UN language, but we really urge for it to be fully in one of the UN languages if possible. What other supporting documents? You must also have 2 reference letters. So reference letters from 2 sources, not internal, that can attest to the initiative are required. If provided, again, by a non-UN official language, a translation must also be provided. And then we also want a website or a link to the initiative. If there is no website for the initiative, then you should provide a link to the institution that oversees the initiative. So that could even be the ministry, for example. And then you have the option of submitting additional documentation of up to 5 additional documents or materials can be provided. And this can be everything from policy briefs to case studies, to newspaper articles, outreach materials, videos, etc. So the sky's the limit on that one. We will only evaluate or take a look at the five additional documents. So if you submit 20 additional documents, we may take the top 5. So we would urge you to be selective and give us your best 5 if you have more than 5. And then the evaluation process. So after you submit, so the deadline is the 18th of November. After you submit, then we begin the evaluation process, which runs typically from December to March. There are 2 key rounds. One is the UNPSA evaluation team, which evaluates the applications, and each initiative is evaluated taking into consideration, again, its given country or region. After that first round, a group of United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration, so SEPA, conducts further reviews and recommendations and comes up with a shortlist. The shortlist of initiatives undergo a process of validation. So that you're also asked this when you submit a nomination of consent for validation. So we will look further into the initiative, consult with people on the ground who are familiar with the initiative, just to make sure it is what it says it is. And then the final selection of winners among the validated initiatives is made by the UN Secretary General. And winners are announced usually around the 23rd of June, which is UN Public Service Day. And now to the bad news, disqualification. So there's only a few reasons you would be disqualified. Obviously, failure to observe the submission rules of the application. So everything has to kind of be in order. Any conflict of interest or non-adherence to the process. Presenting misleading or false information and supporting documents, which again, this is what we have the validation process for. Inability to provide sufficient documentation to review the initiative. So this is basically saying you need to have all the supporting documents and all the questions filled out in full, otherwise we can't evaluate it properly, or unethical behavior. So I'll answer some questions that have popped up, hopefully, but some key resources I think that are important to have on hand while you're going through the nomination process. Again, please read the submission guidelines available in the 6 official languages. The applicant's manual is a more technical book that basically tells you how to navigate the online nomination platform. Then we, of course, are a good resource as well. If you have any questions, please email us on unpsa@un.org, and we're happy to help provide some advice or answer any concerns you may have. And another excellent resource is the UNPSA Innovation Hub. And this is where you can find examples of winners from previous years, as well as initiatives that have been submitted for nomination. So not just the winners, but I would encourage everybody to kind of navigate through this. You can find details on the various winners and initiatives, and the archive goes back quite a bit. So you can also maybe search for your country to see what type of things have been submitted, or the area that you're working on thematically, to also kind of get some ideas and inspiration of various things. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then see if there are any pressing questions. And Nosifo, I don't know if there's anything that popped up while I was chatting that would need to be answered.
There's a question on the implementation period. So the question is the 2-year implementation period a hard criterion? This would mean that the COVID-19 solutions do not apply, do not qualify for the awards.
Yeah, exactly. So the 2-year is a hard criteria. It has to have been running for at least 2 years by the time of submission. So by the 18th of November, it has to have been running for at least 2 years. With regard to COVID, and John touched upon this earlier, it might be that, for example, you've had a health initiative running for the last 3 years that targets vulnerable people. And that health initiative now is also obviously dealing with COVID-19, but the initiative itself has been running for 3 years. Something like that we could evaluate, but something that, like many initiatives that have been devised over the last few months in response to COVID-19, we can't evaluate it yet. It's too soon. So yeah, it's a hard 2 years.
And then another question on the private public projects. Should the reference letters both be for the public institution, or should one be for the public institution and the other for the private body?
No, yeah, in that case, you know, they should really be for the initiative itself. So it can refer to both the public and private institution in the reference letter. But if they were thinking of doing it like that, then they should be for the public sector institution, for sure. Yeah. Okay, that's all the questions that are on the Q&A. Oh, wow, I was expecting way more. Oh, there's a hand up, yeah. Libania?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can we submit an initiative has already before, but it didn't nominate it?
Yeah, so the only initiatives that can't be resubmitted again are initiatives that have won the UNPSA. If you submitted an initiative 4 years ago and you think, actually, let's try again, we've improved it, we think it has a better chance, for sure. We do suggest that, for example, if you submitted an initiative last year and it didn't win, you know, there's probably a reason why it didn't win, and maybe kind of have a little bit of a think about that. We discourage people from submitting the same initiative year after year. If it hasn't won the first time, it probably won't win the following year. So I think maybe having a bit of time between when you submit the first time and the second time to help improve the program is kind of what we're looking for.
Okay, thanks. But I have another question. This
Sure.
webinar, it will be available for us?
Yeah, so I've been recording it, and I will hopefully have it available online by the end of the week or whenever we have it ready. But yeah, it'll be available online for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Around the attendee list as well.
Thanks.
No problem. I mean, yeah, I think we had received questions as people registered for the event, and I think I kind of addressed most of those. I'm trying to think if I had one more. No, I think that's pretty much it. So I think we kind of addressed most of those. But again, if anybody's listening and a question pops up later, then please email us on unpsa@un.org. We're happy to help out. And then I guess what we would also say is we really encourage you to also circulate the call for nominations around, you know, partners and institutions that you think might be interested or might have initiatives that you think would fall well under each of the categories. So we really kind of encourage dissemination of the call. And again, particularly with the gender category, we want to really kind of showcase the work, what work is happening around gender equality and advancing services and response to girls and women. So absolutely. On that note, I think I will hand the floor back over to John for final remarks, but not before maybe just personally thanking Flor, our intrepid Spanish interpreter, who's been working overtime because we've gone longer than needed, and Nosifo, who's also been helping and has been amazing on the technical side of things. So thank you both. And John, I will hand the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I think what I want to say in closing is first to thank all the presenters for these excellent presentations, which are very illustrative of the work of public servants from all corners of the world and in different fields. It goes to prove that it is not entirely true that public servants do not innovate. I think we know now, and we have known since 2003 with all the proof that in all countries, public servants are struggling very hard to find new, better ways of serving the public. And personally, having been linked to very closely to this Public Service Awards program, I am happy to note that the program has continued giving proof to the world that we really owe a lot to public servants. It doesn't help to keep on highlighting only some of the few challenges they face and then keeping on calling them ineffective, inefficient, bureaucratic, red tape, irresponsible, non-committed. All the bad words concerning administration are always heaped on public servants. So I would really want to thank all the public servants who have presented, because they illustrate that the negative image that is often projected is not the correct image of the public servant. The correct image of the public servants is what we have had today. It's unfortunate that we didn't have our Public Service Day celebration as we normally have in June. But all hope is not lost. We are resilient. We have found a way of listening to you. And we congratulate you very much on this. And we hope you will continue to inspire more of your colleagues to engage in innovation, in searching for excellent ways of serving the public. I would want to thank my colleagues, especially our director, Juang, who has stayed with us all the time. Thank you very much. As you know, from all the presentations, most of the activities that take place in the public service, they are inspired by leadership, sometimes even when the leadership is not really raising the flag. You know that most of these excellent initiatives cannot succeed without some leadership behind. So I want to thank our director, Juang, for always pushing us to find something to do to make the world public service shine a little bit, and even to support us during this pandemic, which stopped us from celebrating as we usually do, at least to have this webinar. Thank you, Elizabeth, for ably facilitating it right from planning up to execution, up to the end. I think it has been very successful thanks to your efforts. Nosifo, Flo, and all the colleagues that I can't see on the screen, but I know they are back listening. I thank you very much for making this successful. So my last word is that now you have listened to the initiatives, now you have listened to the technicalities of submitting innovations. We hope you will go back and spread the word so that we get more and more innovations. As I said, we are happy when you are nominated in many numbers and when some of you win. But we are also happy because you help us to do research and discover how public administration and public service delivery is evolving around the world and how countries can learn from each other to improve their service delivery. So you are now our ambassadors out there, you are our messengers, you spread the word that there is a way of telling the world that public servants are very good to human nature and we should receive more nominations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, you can close. One who has the key to close.
I do. Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.